Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Communication Skills for the Workplace, sponsored by Monterey County Workforce Development Board. My name is Stephanie Neely, and I'm the Marketing Director here at CEA. While we wait for everybody to file into our virtual room, let's practice using the chat box. We're going to be using that a lot throughout our presentation. It's the icon at the bottom of your screen with the single speech bubble. If you could go ahead and put your company name in there, let's see what industries we have joining us today. It's always fun to see who's all joining us and see the different varieties of industries we have with us. All right, while you guys find your chat box, I'll go ahead and finish up some of the housekeeping. There's a few details I'd like to go over with you. Your audio will be muted throughout this presentation, so we're going to ask for your participation through the chat box, so make sure you find it. Due to the amount of content we'll be covering today, we'll ask you to hold your questions until the end, and we'll allow some time to read and answer those aloud so we can cover all your questions. The handouts for this presentation were attached to the reminder email that was sent out yesterday. If you need them resent or didn't receive them, please put your email in the chat box and I'll make sure you get a copy of those. I'm also here for any technical issues that you might run into. Let me know and I will help you troubleshoot those. At the end of this presentation, a survey will pop up. Your feedback is very important to us. It helps us improve these presentations moving forward. A QR code will pop up, so please snap a picture of it when it pops up. The survey shouldn't take you more than a few minutes. This presentation will be recorded and available on the Monterey County Workforce Development Board website after the presentation. Your speaker today is Training and Coaching Director Jessica Rivera. Before we hand it over to Jessica, we have a word from Monterey County from Laura Kirshner. Take it away, Laura.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, ladies, for having us on today. We're delighted to host the event with CEA. It's always been a good partnership for us. We are Monterey County Works, and we are part of the community, have been in existence for over 30 years. The name has changed, but the services are the same. We, in a nutshell, bring employers and job seekers together through our programs and services, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act services here at Monterey County Works. The board is still in existence, Monterey County Workforce Development Board, but we are now basically highlighting the services of the organization as opposed to the board itself. We bring individuals and businesses together through job fairs and recruitments listed on your screen right now, through our job boards and our promotional activities. We also have on-the-job training, which is for our local employers. It provides incentives to hire people within our programs and services at 50% of an individual's wage. We also have layoff aversion services. If you find that your business happens to be going the other way, we can help. We can step in and help you blunt the blow for employees that may be affected through our rapid response services, and we can help you to maybe pare down a position into one job instead of maybe multiple positions, and there's some funding to help you do that. Our other resources include Human Resources Hotline. We've got everything HR related. If you need access to that, we can provide you with a 1-800 number to call. We also have some employee videos, hiring videos that we are now offering to our local employers as a supportive service for small businesses. And we're very much having a good time producing those here locally. So get a hold of us if that's something that you want and you're an employer here in Monterey County. We'd be happy to chat with you about that. We've got, lots of other upcoming webinars. The next one, I believe, is the Chat GPT webinar, and that is coming up on April 3rd. So want to be sure and let you know of the upcoming webinars. And we've also got some other ones down the line all the way through August. So we're delighted to participate today. If you need additional service, please reach out to us here at Monterey County Works. My contact information is on the screen, 831-796-3341 or kirshnerl@co.monterey.ca.us. Take a peek at our brand new website. We're awful proud of that. It's been totally redone, and we are here to serve you and delighted to do so. Thank you so much, ladies.
All right, thank you, Laura. And I just added a link to the chat box to the next webinar if you would like to register now for that ChatGPT information. That is such a fun presentation to attend. It is constantly changing because the state of AI is constantly changing. So you're not going to want to miss that. All right. And now I'm going to pass it over to you, Jessica. Take it away.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Laura. Pleasure to be working with Monterey and all of the fabulous resources they provide to employers. And partnering with them, we are California Employers Association, and we provide human resources services and solutions. Lots of things going on with compliance when it comes to human resources and the people side of our business. So we do that. We provide that peace of mind to our employers. So I encourage you, use the hotline if you have a question. We've got subject matter experts on site ready to handle any situation you may come up with and answer any questions for you to guide you as needed. Also, a legal disclaimer, our attorneys make us say we're not attorneys. We do not provide legal advice, but we do provide guidance, and we will recommend that you seek legal counsel if it is needed when we speak with you. So don't hesitate to call us. We're here for you. And again, happy to be working with Monterey. With that in mind, what we're going to cover today around communications are the challenges we find in the workplace. We also want to talk a little bit about understanding communication styles, some tips for effective communications, and also efficient communications and professional communications. And then lastly, managing conflict and finding those solutions when we find that we might be at cross purposes or not agreeing or seeing things the same way. So we'll be covering those today. I do have a lot of material to cover, and we'll save some time at the end for any questions you might have. And also, you have copies of everything I'm going to be covering today, so you'll have a lot of information to refer back to. So let's go ahead and jump in. Who knew that 70% of mistakes in the workplace are a result of poor communications? And I've seen figures even as high in some surveys and research, up to 80%, that really causes issues in the workplace. And when we think about our relationships with people that we work with, whether they're in the organization, outside the organization, they really are the sum. The quality of that relation is the sum of all of the interactions we have with folks through communications. So, a couple of principles that do not change when it comes to communications in the workplace and in our life in general. Everything we do sends a message. It's communication. How we approach someone, if we smile or don't smile, the tone of our voice, our body language, our email communications, our texting. How we start our communications normally determines the outcome of that communication. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, why it's important to make sure we're in the right place, especially when we're dealing with conflict. Also, how a message is delivered always determines the way a message is received. Back to, are we in the right headspace, mind space to have a conversation? And are we showing up with the intention that we want to show up with? And then lastly, really important to remember, and I work with a lot of leadership teams, a lot of employers, a lot of employees, and people get so frustrated when someone doesn't understand what we're trying to convey. Yet real communication is really what that person receives when we're communicating, not what we intend. And we have to own that. When we communicate with others, we have to own our communications to ensure understanding on the other side. Some of the barriers that we see when it comes to communications, and they're usually confirmed, if not always confirmed, by people we work with on a regular basis, is, understanding that we are the sum of everything we've experienced in our lives, our upbringing, our culture, our education, our career experience, our life experience. All of those things are those things that make us unique, and they have us, behave in ways that are different than each of us, because we're all the sum of our experience, knowledge, and education. And one of the things that we see a lot is not sharing the same meaning in the words that we use. Many of you, if I said, gosh, what word has changed in the last several years that you thought meant one thing, now it means something else. But words continue to change, the meanings continue to change for 5 generations in the workplace. With 5 generations in the workplace, we're always going to have, different learnings, different understandings, and different ways of communication. A great example of this is while we're all in our various offices, home offices, or offices right now, if I were to say to everyone, we're going to take a trip, we're going to go to Hawaii, and we will be going to Hawaii tomorrow. Our flight leaves at 11 a.m. And please, everyone, be on time for your flight. When we do this, when we say this, I would venture to say that amongst all of us, we're all going to have different times that we're going to be arriving at that airport. Some of us will arrive at the airport more than 2 hours ahead of the flight leaving at 11. Some will arrive an hour before. And if you're anything like my daughter, you'll be running to the terminal and boarding that plane just as they're ready to shut the door. Different ways on what on time, different meanings on what on time looks like to each of us. And usually we'll have a mix of everyone in a group when we do these workshops around the change of words and how they show up for different people. Another barrier that we run into is being emotionally charged around words or ideas. And we are in an election year now, and we're already seeing a lot of emotions tied into politics. Yet there's a lot of things that we experience in our lives that create emotions for each and every one of us. Typical topics we really should not discuss in the workplace are things like religion, politics, and yes, sometimes sports, believe it or not. If we can't have good conversations or effective conversations around them. So, understanding that there are some things that come up in the workplace that can trigger someone and create those strong emotions for them. So that can also be a barrier that we hear about a lot. And again, being an election year, I'm sure you're probably already having some interesting discussions in the workplace or observing some interesting discussions in the workplace. Some additional barriers that come up when it's tied to communications are things like hurtful statements or gossip or humor, inappropriate humor, not suitable for work, things like jokes and such. Also, as I mentioned earlier, we're all different, we're all unique, which is a beautiful thing. Yet we all have different levels of what we consider privacy. Some of us are open books in the workplace. We will share pretty much most things that go on in our lives, and we enjoy talking about them. Yet there's other people that we work with who are very private, and they don't open that door very wide when it comes to sharing information about themselves. So part of this when it comes to communication is picking up those cues and clues. As I'm talking, say, with Laura or Natalie or any of you, I'm going to have to pay attention just how much information you are comfortable sharing, and I have to adjust my behavior that way too, so that I don't invade someone's privacy or make them feel uncomfortable, and also the personal space too. Some of us in the workplace like to get up close and personal. Some of us are huggers when we see people or when we meet people. Yet we have to be mindful of people's personal space. And we saw that change a lot with the pandemic. Even shaking hands today is still pretty rare. And again, picking up those cues and clues from the person that we're either meeting or that we're going to be with for a period of time. Disrespectful listening, I'll talk a little bit more about that. When we work with companies all the time and we talk with folks in our workshops, we hear a lot of things from them that tells them, conveys that message that people aren't really listening to me. People aren't paying attention. They're not fully present. We'll talk a little bit more about this as we go a little further. Also, fault finding and being overly critical. Some of us are naturally devil's advocates. We have a strategic mind and we look for things in a way that, okay, if we do this, this is what's going to happen next, and then next, and then next. Our minds just go into the future. And part of that causes us to ask a lot of questions sometimes. And we're not trying to be negative, but we're making the other person feel defensive because they feel like they're being challenged, or why are you asking me all these questions? So as if some of you are those folks that are really strategic and you're asking the questions because you really want to understand, sometimes you have to let people know, I'm probably going to ask you a lot of questions. It's how my mind works, because I always think about how this might impact this or how it will look in the future, because it sets that person more at ease. And there are many of us who are naturally wired to do that. And then also criticizing or mocking someone in front of others. As teammates, colleagues, peers, leaders, we always want to talk about improvement privately, praise in public, but discuss improvement areas in private to respect the people that we're privileged to work with and lead. So when you take a look at this pyramid and the modes of communication from the least intimate to the most intimate, you will see that email, which it drives pretty much most of our communications. Yes, it's crazy, but it's true. We just have to look at our inboxes. It's the least intimate form of communication. And then as we go up on this pyramid to the peak of the pyramid, you see the most intimate is face to face. And as we think about how our work lives have changed in the past several years, some of us do work remotely, some of us are hybrid, half and half, some of us are fully on site. And in some cases, especially with people who are working remotely, we don't always have that chance to see people face to face, maybe on a virtual meeting. 2% of our time at work is normally spent on the phone for many of us, 2 to 10%. So being able to truly connect in real time with folks is tough. So understanding too that as we look at this pyramid, if I have a standard, run of the mill communication, email's fine. Yet if I have to have a conversation with someone where it has a potential for controversy, conflict, we have to really get down and deep into this conversation because of some issues that have to change or things that have to happen. You'll want to seriously consider virtual so you can at least see people's body language, their face, make eye contact, and then of course face to face. There's no replacement for that, because that way people can sense your energy, your intention, and hopefully work towards a resolution. So types of communication, also called styles of communication, you'll see that there's 4 different ones here listed. The passive one is more of a victim mentality. I lose, you win. These are folks that really don't share what they need to share. They don't speak up for fear of not looking good, or past experience tells them my voice doesn't matter. That's one style of communication. And you may have people who are passive in your workplace, and part of it is the experiences they've had before. Some may be more introverted, yet working towards being able to get them to be included, to feel that they are included, they are important, so that you can hear more of their brilliance, because a lot of times we don't get people's brilliance when they have that passive communication style. Aggressive, need I say more? We've probably all worked with aggressive communication types in the past. The mentality, I win, you're going to lose. I'm going to do everything in my power to get what I need. I don't care what you think. I don't care what you want. I need to get what I want. And hopefully you don't have to work with people like that much today, but they still are a communication type to be aware of. Then we have passive aggressive, which is I lose, you lose. And we've worked with people who show those tendencies in their communications. An example is you'll see many times in meetings, we will have a meeting and we all hash it out. We all decide we're going to do something. Yet I didn't get my way. It didn't go the way I wanted. So I may show up in a way that, oh yeah, I'm behind it, I'm aligned. Yet I leave the meeting and then I start doing things that aren't going to make it successful. That's a passive aggressive communication style, or things will be said with that undertone, with that double entendre that you're thinking that's not really what they mean. There's another meaning to this. So of course that's a communication type we work with also. The best communication type, the best that we want to have is the assertive, which is collaborative, which is I'm looking at this as a whole. I want us both to walk away feeling good about our conversation and feeling that you've been heard. Assertive people do take that time. They take the time to collaborate, to have a good conversation. And as we do that, it strengthens our relationships with folks. So when we think about effective communicators, most of them are assertive communicators, which means it's clear, they're transparent, they connect. That's another piece, is connecting with people when we're working with them so they feel that they're part of something larger. Also, uh, assertive communicators, they give honest feedback in a helpful way. And what I mean by that is many of us still probably remember feedback that we've received in our careers that still haunt us today because it wasn't delivered in a way that inspired us or motivated us. When we give feedback that we want to inspire and motivate people that we work with, we want to do what they call positive feed forward. We want to talk about, here's how in the future you want to do this. Here's how it would be even more successful, more impactful, more powerful. And when we give feedback in a way that helps people see what you expect, that tends to motivate them more. And I'm not saying if someone messes up, we don't give feedback. Most of the time, our folks will beat themselves up worse than we'll ever do anything if they've made a mistake. We're hard on ourselves. So when we do that, when we know that one of our folks or someone's messed up, one of the most effective things you can do is just say something like, what happened? Or how do you think that went if they did a presentation and it fell flat? What can you do better? What should we do next time? Being able to set up that coaching situation where they feel that you're more of a coach to them and helpful to them moving forward. Assertive communicators use good judgment when making decisions. People who are the most confident people around know what they know and they know what they don't know. And if they don't know something, they're not afraid to say, I'm not so sure about this. I need to do more research. Let's talk about this more. Help me understand why we want to go in this direction. But they use their judgment. They listen, they pay attention, and they take in information as needed to make good decisions. Also, they're respectful and they listen well. And we hear a lot about respect in the workplace today and how we have to pay attention to that because, again, with 5 generations in the workplace, respect looks different to people. And we want to make sure that we're showing up in a way that everyone we work with feels respected. And then lastly, and probably the most powerful, is they look to collaborate with others. They're not afraid of asking questions. They're not afraid of getting further input. They're not afraid to pause and really think about what's going to happen next because they know that it's important to make people feel that they had a say in whatever's going to happen. When I talk about nonverbal communication, it's it's always a good reminder to be aware that our bodies, our face, the tone of our voice, they betray us all of the time. And the reason I say that is because many times we'll find ourselves in a situation where our intention is really good. We're trying to do something good, but our mind is somewhere else, or we're juggling too many things in our head. I call it, monkey brain, too many monkeys jumping around on our brain. And When we are communicating with people and we're really happy to see them, or say we have a new employee starting, but you've got 6 other things that have to get done before 11 and you're supposed to meet with this new employee, sometimes our body language will show how stressed we are or how many things we have on our mind, and we're not making that person feel truly welcome, or our words aren't aligning with our body language. So as we take a look at this list here, if you're meeting someone for the first time, a smile goes such a long way. It relates that you're approachable, that you're looking forward to meeting them, that you're someone I want to talk to. The tone of our voice, paying attention to the tone. Many times, if we are challenged, our tone will take an edge to it. And when we're having conversations around conflict, which I'll talk about in a bit, we have to be aware of that because we want to be neutral as much as we can, a neutral tone of voice, so that we, again, align with the words we're saying and our tone of voice is not giving us away. Our posture, overall posture when we're meeting with someone in person, being fully present, eye contact. We get a lot of conversations around eye contact because in some cultures, eye contact is not considered respect. It's considered disrespectful. Here in the US, eye contact is a sign of respect. So when we work with folks, some are not comfortable with eye contact, and we coach them and say, if you need to, just to be able to do it moving forward, look at the center of someone's forehead. Don't worry about the eyes because they'll think that you are looking at their eyes, but eye contact is a skill that can be learned and we can improve upon. And our facial expressions. If we're really happy to see someone, we need to make sure our face is demonstrating that. Or if we're celebrating someone or recognizing someone, making sure our face is conveying that. And then being engaged and our vibes. Oprah Winfrey used to say, we are responsible for the energy we bring into a room. And if you think about folks you have worked with over the years, there are some people that they would walk into a room and the energy would be absolutely lifted. You could just feel the energy. Conversely, there were people we worked with that when they walked into a room, you could feel the energy drop. You could just feel that immediately. So being mindful of our body language and that energy we bring into a room, because it also allows us to know and to pay attention when we're fully present, that when it comes to communication, the most important thing is hearing what's not said, picking up those cues and clues as you connect with people. So, conversation stoppers. This is something that can be very helpful when you work with your teams. And it's really having a conversation, asking the question, are there things that I do or say that might be inconsiderate to others in our communications? Are there things that we do as a team with each other that may come across as inconsiderate to others when we communicate? We ask this question of folks all the time in workshops, and we get a list of a lot of things that can be those conversation stoppers. And things like, don't interrupt me, make that eye contact, don't look at your phone, don't be distracted, pay attention. You know, let me know that you're listening. Some people say that when they're at events sometimes or in meetings sometimes or uh, gatherings, people will look over their head and they're not listening because they're looking to see who's going to come into that room next. And asking your team that can also go a long way in just getting some good insights for yourself and for your team about, we didn't realize that was inconsiderate. Maybe we should take another look at that or pay attention to that. And then on the flip side of this, what are those conversation enhancers? How do they show up for people? And how do they show up in a way that you are able to really connect and feel good about the things that you're talking about, and the person you're communicating with has that message that, gosh, Jessica really wants to be here, she's paying attention to me, and everything she's conveying is she's listening, she's truly listening, and I want to continue this conversation. again, as I said before, don't be afraid to ask your team this, because it's, it's a combination, the folks that we work with, the things that we do, the situations we find ourselves in, and ask them, what are those things that we do as a team that really make us feel good about communicating, connecting with each other? What are those? What are they specifically? Because if they make that kind of difference, we want to do more of them. And you'll be surprised at some of the things that you might hear. Some of the things that I hear a lot from folks is things like, there's enthusiasm in someone's voice. They're interested. The energy is really good. They're approachable. They ask questions. And the most important one, and this is a gift you can give anyone that you're working with, is they're giving me their full attention. They're fully present. They're not typing an email. They're not looking at their phone, but they're absolutely there in the moment with me. And again, that goes a long way for folks when it comes to communications, because if you think about your best leaders, best colleagues that you've ever worked with, chances are there are some that come to mind for you immediately because of how they communicated with you. People don't always remember what you said. They will always remember how you made them feel. And that's when we think of best leaders that made us feel like we mattered, we were valued, and we were heard. They listened to us. One of my favorite topics to talk about is listening. So if you have a chance, feel free to put in the chat box, why has listening become so hard for us? Oh my goodness, when you think about articles that we read about listening, one that comes to mind for me is Fast Company. And they talk about how being a good leader is so important for all of us because it establishes our role as a professional who is effective and empathetic, who keeps an open mind and willing to learn from others. So it's hard to do, I know, but as you think about that and as you jot down down in the chat box for others to see, here are some common things that we run into when we talk to groups about why listening is so hard. First one is we want to talk. We like to talk. We want to get our voice out there. And one person said, you can always tell when someone wants to say something before you're done. You can just see it in their face. And we call that telling tension, because you can see that they're not fully there because they're just trying to hold it in until they can say something to you. So that's a big one. Our natural desire to talk, weigh in, throw our opinion in there. Also, we judge others. Sometimes at first impression, it's been said, a first impression when you meet someone for the first time, less than 7 seconds for someone to already make judgments about you. And if someone has made a judgment about us that, maybe this person really isn't worth listening to, they're going to be someplace else. They're not even going to pay much attention to you, probably be very selective about what they are listening for. And an interesting point around first impressions, if we make a great first impression, awesome, celebrate, that's what we want to do. On the flip side, if we don't, if we have a negative first impression when we meet someone, it will take up to 8 consequent future interactions to eliminate that bad first impression. So again, when we're thinking about greeting new employees, interviewing employees, meeting vendors, meeting partners, working with colleagues, that first impression is so, so important. Also, we have preconceptions and biases. Some of us are how we were raised, are things that we've been exposed to, and we have to be aware of our own biases too. Awareness is half the battle. And if someone gives you feedback around, gosh, you're being pretty judgmental about that, or why do you have that feeling about this person? Look at that as an opportunity to learn a little bit more about yourself, because sometimes we don't realize that we have those biases, and we need to be able to, correct that for ourselves so that we do pay attention. And again, similar to judging others, we have to be aware of our own filters. And then also trying to multitask. Multitasking was set up back in the 60s and 70s for computers, not for people. Used to be a badge of honor, and it's not considered a badge of honor anymore because none of us does it exceptionally well. Yes, maybe we can walk and chew gum at the same time, but when it comes to truly listening to someone and being fully present, it's very hard to do when we're trying to do something else or two or three other things. Also, we shut people off sometimes. We just, you know, that Natalie doesn't have anything to say, or that Sam doesn't have anything to say that I want to listen to. So I'm just going to shut them off. And we really lose some opportunities when we do that. And then also, lastly, information overload. We have a lot of information coming to us at all different points of time, and sometimes we're just overwhelmed. It's been said that we make more decisions in a year than our grandparents made in their lifetime because there's so much going on in our world today. So, levels of listening. As I said, I'm going to spend just another moment or two around listening because it is that important. So, when we have these levels of listening, if you take a look at the lower line, which has ignore, selective, and pretend, um, ignore, we tend to do that with toddlers when they've asked us for something 32 times and we've said no 32 times and they're still asking for it. We'll kind of ignore them. Hopefully, we don't do that to people that we work with. We also have selective listening, which is I'm listening to you, but I'm only listening for certain pieces of information that I need. I'm not listening to all of the other surround sound or the words that you're saying. And then also we have pretend listening. And pretend listening is just exactly what it says. We're pretending to listen to someone. We're saying uh-huh and nodding our head. Yet, it's going in one ear and out the other. We're just hearing. We're not even listening. We're just hearing the noise, but we're not listening. And that tends to get us in trouble with people usually closest to us. I hear it a lot. And we laugh about this in workshops where people will say, gosh, I went home, my significant other, they're telling me all about their day. And I'm pretending to listen because I'm exhausted from my work day. And then they ask me that dreaded question, what do you think about what I've just said? And I really don't even know what they've just said. So we don't want to find ourselves in that situation at work, of course. Then you go to the next level, which is attentive listening. We're paying attention, we're present, and we're really doing our best to understand what someone is conveying to us. And that's a powerful form of listening. So, if you go to the highest level of listening, and as we talk about empathetic listening, important to know that not all of us are naturally wired to be empathetic. Some of us are naturally born with empathy. Some of us have to be aware that maybe it's not my strength, but I have to pay attention to this because empathetic listening is that ability to put yourself in that other person's shoes, to look to really place yourself on the other side, their perspective, and looking at it like, gosh, why is this person so passionate about this? Or why are they so upset about this? What's happening? What can I ask? What can I better understand to look at it from their level or their point of view? Because that is so successful when you're able to do that because it opens your mind when it comes to people that you work with. They know that, they feel it, they sense it. And again, taking it back to I matter. What I'm saying to this person, I matter. They're really looking at it from my point of view. And if you can discipline yourself to see things through the eyes of the other person, it really is the highest form of listening, and it's the hardest to accomplish. You don't have to do it in every single thing, but in those situations where it requires it, that's really important. So, some tips for listening, active listening moving forward. Ask open ended questions. If people are coming to you and they're out of left field and you don't have a clue what they're talking about or what they've said has caused you to be, a little annoyed or frustrated, ask questions because as we listen to people, many times they're coming to you with something they've spent a lot of time on, thinking, ruminating, all of those things, but this is the first time you've heard it. And if it's the first time you've heard it, you don't have the benefit of all of their knowledge. So asking those open-ended questions helps you to get a little more centered and also to understand the path that they're going through to come to this conclusion. And know that in conversations, silence is okay. Earlier, I talked about those conversation stoppers where people interrupt us. Sometimes people will say something quite powerful that you'll just want to pause for a moment to make sure, number one, they're done, but also just to reflect on what they've said. So pausing and silence is okay. Or you ask someone a question and they need a moment to think about it. Many of us aren't comfortable with silence, so we'll want to jump in. Silence is okay because that's a powerful sign that you're connecting and you're truly working through a conversation. Already talked about the full attention, don't interrupt. Paraphrasing, that can be very powerful. If you're not understanding what someone's saying, play it back to them. Gosh, if I understand you correctly, this is what you need to do, or this is what you're asking of me. Because sometimes what I think they're asking is not really what they're asking. So paraphrasing helps people also that you're communicating with to be even more clear and transparent in what they need from you. And then, of course, empathy and support that we've already talked about. Reasons to listen. These are all great reasons why we want to listen to others, why it is so important. Um, I've talked about several of these already, but a couple that can really be helpful is it determines your influence. It really can help in how your credibility, how people view you at work. Because you're known as someone who pays attention, you take the time to listen to people, to understand people. It increases your influence in an organization, and also very powerful when it comes to improving or resolving conflicts. Because how many times have we jumped the gun and assumed something without really listening? And then we say something or do something, and it's hard to put that genie back in the bottle. Couple of things to think about when we talk about communications. We have a lot of channels. And with communications that we see today, there's the written, there's the verbal, there's a face to face, there's on the phone, all the different channels that we have. But what is created for us as a society is a lot less face to face, not a whole lot of nonverbal. When you send me an email or you send me a text, I'm not sure, I don't pick up on any cues. I'm just reading the words on a page. Also, we have shorter attention spans, so we have to be even more clear and concise than ever before. Some people aren't trained in communication platforms, or they're not necessarily strong writers, and they may circle, 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 or as we call them, long talkers or long writers, and not get to the point. So that can cause some issues too. And then also the speed. As a group in your company, do you have a guideline when you respond to an email or a text? Most of us do it pretty quickly, but sometimes people will copy us on things and just to know, so we're not going to respond to that, but also setting that expectation too, so that they know when they can get a response. Subject lines always matter when it comes to emails because subject lines can make or break your written communications, especially on you getting a response on something that you need. So when it comes to written communication, some tips to consider: keep it concise, keep it clear, keep it professional. So important. Back to the 5 generations in the workplace, back to different meanings and different words, different barriers that come up, making sure that we pay attention to our written communications, especially in a workplace where we want to be respectful, we want to be professional, and paying attention. Should this be written communication, or is it better suited for a phone call? Is it better suited for a face to face? We tend to go to email because it's so quick and we get it off our plate. Yet some of these things, especially when we get long email chains, could have been resolved in a phone call. Some additional tips: consider the reader. Will they know your jargon? If you have acronyms, if you have abbreviations, if you have company language and you're communicating with someone outside of your company, they're not going to understand it. How do I want to communicate with this person? What are their needs? What are their objectives? And really important, because email, digital communication stays out there forever. Is this going to be shared with others? Whatever you communicate digitally, you want to make sure that it will withstand bright lights any place else it might go? And also, is it your first email to this person? Making sure that you do, a greeting, a closing, a thank you if needed, making sure we still keep that level of respect in communications that we would have if we were talking with someone. And then again, I mentioned earlier, taking responsibility for our own communication, making sure that I own this. If you don't understand my message, that's my fault. I need to be better at communicating that message, and making sure that, again, that knowing that anything you send from your company computer is really the property of your company. And I've seen, sadly, email make or break a career. How we treat each other, how we respond to each other, or written communication. We want to make sure that it's so obvious that people understand it and that our intent is coming through as much as it can, because I can't see you, I can't hear you, I'm just seeing words on a page. So those common courtesies of please, thank you, um, greeting, and sign off are still important today. And then meeting expectations, this is really just for you to look at in the future around meetings that we have. Are we creating agendas? Are we giving people, if we have, lots going on at our company, does everyone have to attend? Is it mandatory? Is it optional? Do we have a facilitator? And are we keeping the meeting on track? Because meetings really should be to discuss, debate, decide, and develop when we think about why we get together. And that doesn't always happen, and it causes frustration. So let's talk for just a few moments about managing conflict and finding solutions towards conflict. When I normally ask folks, how do you define conflict? What words come to mind? I would say that easily 85% of the words that come to mind for people are negative. They're painful. We hear things like, it's, ugh, or, oh my gosh, I avoid it. I don't want to deal with it. It hurts. It's hard to do. Managing conflict is a skill, just like communication. Some of us were not raised in an environment where we could have dynamic dialogue. Some of us were. Some of us had great dialogues at the dinner table. So it's a skill that can be learned, can be improved upon. And for some of the folks that we work with, we want to help them be able to engage in a healthy, dynamic dialogue to get to some points of resolution on issues. And here's some of the sources of conflicts. Sometimes we ignore other people's needs. Our perception of something is far different than someone else's. Inconsistencies. Some people think they're being treated differently, their perception. Power, when someone tries to make somebody change, or they're doing something from a position of power and not giving other people a voice. Values, what we hold as valuable. And then emotions, when our emotions get the best of us and they boil over. But these can lead to unhealthy conflict. So when conflict is not managed well, you see all of these things that happen in an organization, and it doesn't get better. So we want to always make sure that as we look at these issues, that we try to address conflict as soon as we can in a healthy way. And when we do, here's the benefits of being able to resolve conflict, and the benefits when it's managed well. It really does promote growth, creativity, innovation. It helps people grow their skills, and it really helps progress in an organization and a better understanding of each other, our cultures, our values, our belief. So when we're able to do it in a healthy way, it goes a long, long way for the benefits of the company. A key point when it comes to resolving conflict is focus on the issue, not the person. And that's what happens many times. It gets personal, people get upset, people get angry, and we want to focus on what the issue is. We can beat up a problem, we just don't want to beat up each other. Focusing on what we want, getting our headspace in the right place, to say when we go into a situation or we find ourselves in a situation that we have the right goals in mind. So, for example, unhealthy goals, you'll see these on the left. Many of these are tied to ego. When I work with groups, when I do coaching with people, one of the first things I ask people is check the ego at the door, because this is a time of learning, a time of growth. No one has to be right or wrong. In many cases, both people are right to a degree. When you look at the healthy side of it, goals that you want to go in with, we want to learn, we want to get to the truth. We want to get the job done and get to a decision, and we want to still have a great relationship. We want to walk out of there feeling that we've all had a voice and that we made a decision that we're aligned behind. And the most important thing is our voice was heard. It was taken into consideration, because we're not always going to get our way. That's life. Yet I'm still aligned behind this situation and this decision that we've collectively done and we've made together. And then emotional intelligence and conflict. EQ, as they call it, is our ability to be aware of our feelings and also how we respond to things when we are in an emotional state. Are we aware of them, and are we behaving in a way that we're still professional? We're still doing everything we can to be collaborative and have those healthy goals. And the other side of EQ is, am I paying attention to the people that I'm working with? Am I picking up on their words, their tone, their behavior? Am I paying attention to that? Because bottom line, this is about our relationship. So when we think about that and we think about times when we're in conflict, it's okay to disagree. We just don't want to disrespect. And here's some things to consider as we do this. Finding common ground, basic negotiations 101. How many times have we gone into negotiating someone where we have a lot of things that we agree on? Discussions, we agree on 90% of what we want to do, yet that 10% or 5% is blown up so big that it's over everything else. So sometimes it's just a matter of, let's agree, let's find out what we have common ground on, what we're trying to achieve. Level setting everyone, that goes such a long way in going into that healthy discussion where people may have differing opinions. Also, making sure that people feel seen or heard, and bringing people in who may be introverts, asking, gosh, Stephanie, I know you've done this before. What do you think about this? Sometimes we have to gently pull people into those conversations. Be clear in our communication, stay focused at the issue at hand. And some of the best can get sidetracked if they don't prepare for a situation where there might be conflict, because they might go off in a different direction and they're not staying with the focused on the issue at hand. And then sometimes we need to take a pause. We need to step away and say, let's get back to this in a few days. Let me think about this, you think about it, and let's come together. And sometimes that's really important when emotions are high or when we are so far apart. It gives us that time to think things through a little bit more. Obviously, you can't do it if the house is on fire and you've got to make a call yet, but if you can, that can also go a long way in getting to that best resolution. So with that in mind, I've covered quite a bit of information. So a couple of things just in summary to consider. Be aware of your communications and how you show up. Awareness is half the battle of anything. Warren Buffett from Berkshire Hathaway has said that when we can improve our communications, when we have solid communication skills, it increases our value to our organization by 50%. And we know he knows what he's talking about. He's been a pretty successful businessman over the years. Also, asking for feedback on how you can enhance your communication and conflict management skills. Asking people, give me feedback. What did you see that was good? What did you see that wasn't? When you open yourself up to feedback or feed forward, it really helps to develop and grow your skills. And you're giving permission to folks to give you that feedback or feed forward. So you're not defensive, because I'm asking for it. I want to grow in these skills. And then lastly, using the recommended tips offered in this handout. There's a lot of information. I encourage you, share it with your teams. Go back and look at it. Ask yourself those questions. What can I use today to make me an even more effective communicator in the future? And then moving forward, To know something and not do anything with it is not to know. Right? So if we learn something and we just let it put it on the shelf and not look at it again, there are some benefits to going back and taking some action, even one action on what we talked about today. So just a question for you as we conclude for today and open it up for questions. Moving forward, what's one thing that you will take action on starting today to better communicate as a leader? You may not have a title of official leader, but we're still a leader of one, which is ourselves. What's that one thing that you might do today to make you even more effective as a communicator? Please feel free to put anything in the chat box for others to see and for us to see. And with that in mind, what questions do you have about anything that I've covered?
Thank you so much for all that information, Jessica. You went through a lot. Um, while I wait for more people to put some questions in the chat, I'll read out one that came through a little bit earlier. We had somebody asking about generations in the workplace and how communication changes based on the generations. And I know that's been a hot topic lately. Could you touch on that for us?
Yes, there are a lot of changes in the workplace. Keeping in mind, we don't want to stereotype any one generation, but when you look across the board, and we're going to be doing a workshop on harmony across generations for Monterey. When you look across the board, we look at the generations from those who are, some still in their 70s and 80s working, all the way to our Generation Z in their 20s, early 20s, and what we grew up with. So you have one generation growing up with a telephone and hard copies of everything to another generation, all digital, mainly digital. So how do we connect? And back to the goal that we talked about earlier is we have to adjust to our audience, right? If I'm working with someone, I'm going to ask them, what's your preference in terms of how we communicate? Because I want to get a response on my communications. What's the quickest, easiest, best way to communicate with you? Part of that is asking people and understanding when you look across the board, we all grew up with different modes of communication. And some of us are very comfortable with phone conversations. Some of us are very comfortable face to face. Some of us maybe not so much. So again, asking people their preferred mode of communication, what they would like. And we'll go into that in far more detail too in the upcoming webinar that we'll be doing, Harmony Across Generations. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. That was a very detailed answer. That was very helpful. All right, we don't currently have any other questions in the chat box, but I would like to encourage people to look over your handouts. If you have any other questions, please give us a call on the hotline service. Our HR support team will be here to help you, and this was a lot of information, so if you need a day to ruminate on it, look over it, share it with your team. We are here to help whenever those questions pop up. All right, and for those of you looking for your continuing education codes, if you're looking for your HRCI credits, it is 655687. And if you're looking for your SHRM code, it is 24 hyphen. Make sure you get that hyphen in there. He is very important. M as in Mary, 93VD. And that will get you your codes for today. Here's the survey that I mentioned at the very beginning of the webinar. Please just snap a picture of that QR code on your phone. It'll pop open a quiz that won't take you more than a minute. It is very short, I promise. We would love to get your feedback on this presentation and anything else that you would like to see moving forward. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you had a great morning and we hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and we will talk to you guys all later. Bye, everybody.